Hello and welcome to week 13 in Psychology Seminar, where we're going to be taking a look at some of the basic skills that are necessary to hone to an expert level on your way through a career in psychology. And it's kind of based loosely on the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but it has to do mostly with, let's look at the title here, reading. It is reading, writing, and mathematics, and we're going to be talking about statistics, experiencing literature of the field, and also APA citation. That's the writing part. So reading, writing, and arithmetics for psychology. So let's go into the actual place here. And we start off, here's the tasks here, the outcomes, the ability to read scientific literature from the field, understand it, critique it, and apply it in our own work. This stuff is not easy to read. The ability to write using standards of writing that are dictated in the field of psychology, and the ability to work with statistics and other representations of ideas in numbers. And so I go through a little thing here about reading the literature. This is, when we think about the term literature, we often think about poetry and plays and novels and whatnot. But what it refers to is it's the literature, and in the field of psychology, that is where the fund of knowledge of psychology is stored. It's stored in its literature, in the writings, the collected writings of the entire field. So when we refer to what does the literature say about something, what we're referring to is, on this particular issue, what does the research within the field of psychology tell us about this particular situation? Now, you're going to familiarize yourself with that by exploring journals. Now, journals are specific kinds of magazines that are, well, a lot of them are digital now, but they're magazines that you will not find at the magazine rack at the bus station. It's not going to be there. These journals are written for professionals, by professionals. Even you and I, well, I guess I am, but as a student, you go in there, you are not the intended audience. The intended audience of a research article are other researchers. It's how scientists communicate with each other and let each other know what they found, so that others can critique them or duplicate them or support their ideas or grow collectively the fund of knowledge that we have in psychology. Now, these journals, there's hundreds of them in the field of psychology describing all kinds of fields of study within there. But one way to get a kind of sense of some of them, I put a link in the material here, view all the divisions in the APA. And if I clicked on that, it brings me to the website of the American Psychological Association. And let's see if I can, that's join a division. Let's see, about APA. Let's go to divisions of the APA, probably a weird link here. Oh, right there, view all the divisions, that's where that is. So if I looked at all the divisions, these are all the different fields, official fields within psychology. So you have rehabilitation psychology, behavior analysis, psychologists in independent practice, Society of Addiction Psychology, up here, Division 2, Society for the Teaching of Psychology. I'm a member of that. And if you click on this area, this is Society for the Teaching of Psychology. There's their website, and they have a publication, their journal. And you can click on the Teaching of Psychology, and it will bring me to their website. Teaching of Psychology Journal. Here's some latest articles. These are not free. These are not, they're largely available in EBSCO, but these are paid subscriptions for the Society of the Teaching of Psychology, Division 2 in the American Psychological Association. And that's where I'm asking you to go to get some sense of the different kinds of journals that are out there. You also have access to the EBSCO database through our library. And so you can visit the EBSCO services through our library, and this allows you to search in many of these journals that would normally you'd have to pay for them. You can search for them there. And a lot of the times they have the full text. You can download the whole thing. You have a copy of the article that you're looking for and everything. If they don't have it, you can get all the information you need, submit that information to one of our librarians, and they can get it for you. You should never, as a student, you should never be paying for any research articles. And you should be able to get just about any one you can. So to introduce you to that, I'm going to have you look for an article. Next in the content, we look about writing professionally and introducing the concept of APA style. Now, APA style stands for the American Psychological Association's style for submitting manuscripts to these organizations, to these journals. Colleges attempt to prepare their students for that kind of activity by assigning components of American psychological style to the writings you're doing at this level, even though you're not anticipating publishing them. And they're in three key areas. There's the title page and the information and layout of the title page. There's in-text citations in the narrative of your writing, where you note in parentheses the name and date of the publication where you got that piece of information. You're attributing that information to a source. Didn't come from you. When we quote unquote plagiarize, it's when we fail to attribute an idea that we've written to the person who actually thought of it. So you're basically in writing calling it your own, and that's stealing. So in worlds like mine, where the world of ideas is the actual currency that we have, they're the things that we sell to our buyers, as individuals in the world of ideas and thoughts, then it's important to give credit for where those ideas come from. And we do that within the actual body of our writing. We might say, according to Smith in a publication 1963, blah, blah, blah. No quotes. Don't use quotes. It's a bad idea to use quotes all the time. You paraphrase what they said, but you're giving credit for where that idea come from. The idea, you don't have to only use those citations when you type out word for word. You have to cite the ideas as well. And many articles are full of all kinds of citations like that. The third part is listing those sources so that any reader can look in your manuscript, they can see where you say Smith 1965, they can look in the list of references, not bibliography, not works cited, those are other styles of writing, references, and you list out all your sources for information at the end of the paper. So you have the title page in APA format, you have the in-text citations where you're giving credit where credit is due within the narrative of your paper, and then you have the last page or pages of your paper are the actual alphabetical listing by author of the sources that you used in the paper. Now there's a one-to-one relationship. Everything that's in there needs to be in the references. Everything that's in references needs to be in your paper. So those three components, getting those three ideas, sort of the focus of undergraduate education, the focus of what I'm going to expect you to do here in the psychology program. The last paper in the methods class will be a little bit more introduction to that, maybe some other applications, such as how you do tables and graphs and those kind of things. But nonetheless, mastering those three pieces of writing is important in the field of psychology. Now, the last area that I go into is the APA Style Manual and the OWL website for references and on that. The last area I go into is statistics. And we use numbers. You've heard the phrase, show me the money. What we say in psychology, which we've been saying for a long time, is show me the statistics. Show me the data that is informing your decision as to this observation and your conclusions. Now, we use data, we use a special kind of math called statistics that allows us to predict the likelihood of our conclusions being true or not. And we know, as I said in my writing here, humans don't operate like chemistry sets. They don't operate like many aspects of biology. We are very unpredictable. That's what makes psychology fun. And you can take two people, put them in the exact same situation, and they may come out totally different. Now, because of that, psychology limits its conclusions to theories and models of behavior that predict with some reliability the relationship between variables that impact a particular behavior. So let's say I was going to look at learning math. So an individual who's learning about math, there's lots of factors that contribute to that. There's the type of education they get, their experience, their practice, the support at home, their innate capacity, those kind of things. They all come together to produce the outcome of how well that person does in math. Now, psychologists study all of those variables to see what are the best ones, what are the ones that interfere with learning, how we can overcome particular barriers, kind of things like that. But all we're left with is a bunch of factors, variables that contribute, and this is the best way that we can understand them. So we use statistics in a way to determine cause-effect relationships between one variable and another. We look at correlations too to see if they vary together, but principally we want to know to what degree does the way I'm teaching math cause good math scores. Now, because it's education and because it's human learning and because there's humans involved, it's almost never going to be 100%. In fact, it never is in human beings. So when we approach psychology, it's an interesting way that we use the scientific method. We come up with a hypothesis. I might say, I think that my method is going to raise grades in math. I have to come up with another hypothesis, and that's called the null hypothesis. And that means my technique, my method, will have no impact on the outcomes in math. Now, I'm going to then design an experiment and collect data to determine which one of those is supported by the data. And the language that we use is I'm seeking, maybe I'm motivated because I like my program, I'm motivated to seek information that will allow me to reject the null hypothesis and come to the conclusion that my experimental hypothesis, the one that I said there is going to be an effect, is supported by the data. We didn't prove anything. We're simply saying the data I collected allowed me to reject the null hypothesis and accept the experimental hypothesis. I want you to understand this in the context of how we review psychological literature. The basic assumption within the field of psychology is the null hypothesis. We assume first and foremost there's not going to be an effect. You have to show me evidence otherwise. So it's basically innocent of any effect before proven guilty of any effect. So innocence before proven guilty. With all of these hypotheses, I want to prove my method guilty of raising math grades. But the premise is we're going to assume it's not. That is the null hypothesis. We're going to assume that it's not. And if you can gather enough substantial information that it does, we will say guilty as charged. And we'll have evidence to support that that theory or that model's guilt in terms of its effect on, in this case, math scores. So a little bit about, all accepting and rejecting and all that. And then here's a little thing about statistics. Now we have some stuff to do here. Okay, your only assignment, really. There's a discussion. I want you to talk about your math expertise. How do you feel about math and statistics? Make sure you watch this video. It's very important for you to reply in there about that. And then you're going to do an article review. You are going to, the intent of this is to explore, whoops, I clicked it by mistake. The intent of this is for you to explore a peer-reviewed journal inside of EBSCO. That's where I want you to navigate that, work with the library. You go into the APA divisions, find one that's of interest, review the topics, go to EBSCO, conduct a search on the topic, limiting your results to peer-reviewed, full text, and no more than 5 years old. You can do all that within the interface for EBSCO. Read the entire article. It is hard to read, so expect that. Write a reflection paper in line with the following expectations. You will put a title page in APA format. At the top of this page, this is not how you would normally do a paper, but I'm asking you to do this. On page 2, at the top of the page, write a citation or reference of the article in APA format. Below the citation is a copy of the article's abstract. This is a copy direct. This is a plagiarized. I want you to plagiarize that word for word. Name the APA, on page 3, name the APA division you got this title, this idea from, and the original topic, and summarize what you learned from the article, your experience reading it, and any statistics that you have found, even if you don't fully understand them. This right here, page 1, page 2, page 3. This is a 3-page paper containing these elements. So that is the assignment for this week that you have to go into the library website. The librarians are available to help you learn how to use EBSCO if you're finding it confusing. But you want to start with those APA areas, look for a division in the APA that you find interesting, and then a topic, and then look it up in EBSCO, find an article, read it, and then write this paper about it, and being very mindful of the title page, in-text citations, and the references. And that information, the APA stuff, if you go above in the instructions, you can see a link to the APA manual, and you can see a link to the OWL website, Purdue University's online writing lab, which a lot of people, professionals otherwise, they actually use that as a primary source. So that's a good place to go look up, how do I write a reference to this for this article. It is a practice in detail-oriented stuff, why it's a period instead of a comma. What gets italicized, what doesn't? What gets capitalized, what doesn't? What part of the names? The hanging indent form, where the first of the paragraph form, where the first line goes all the way to the left, but every subsequent line is indented, kind of the opposite of a paragraph. All of that. Trying to get your head wrapped around this concept of this writing style that, in essence, levels the playing field for all of the writers in psychology. Everybody's got to write in this format. So the only thing that's going to rise to the surface that separates you from other writers is going to be your writing. So that's this week's work. I look forward to seeing you in that discussion board, and I look forward to seeing those assignments. Please reach out if you have any problems with any of this, and throw it on the discussion boards, and we'll work it out. Have a great week.